Lisa, are we are rocking and rolling. All right, Councillor Kingy, could I just ask you to give us the blessing today, if that's okay? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kingy. And just before we get underway, I'd like to have a minute's silence for Mr. Reverend Sonny Garmansway, who's unfortunately passed away on Saturday. Saturday, I think it was. Reverend Sonny has been particularly helpful to us as a council with various projects that we've had on the go. So the Garmansway family is a huge family in Taupo, and I was fortunate enough to bring him onto the marae on Sunday, and passed on our condolences. So if I could just have a minute silence for Reverend Sonny Garmansway. Thank you, councillors. Right. Now, apologies. And just as far as the order of the business today, there is a resolution that was unfortunately missed out of the TTC board meeting regarding the sculpture. So when we do those minutes, we will confirm those minutes, correct? Consider the recommendation. Okay, so we'll consider that recommendation from the board. Yes, okay, so that'll be added to the agenda. If I could have a mover for that, please. Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kingy. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Thank you. All right, any conflicts of interest today pertaining to any of the items? All right, we'll go to 3.1, confirmation of the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting on the 20th of August 2018. Do we have any clarification of those minutes or any points of correction? Moved by Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Kingy. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Ordinary Council meeting on the 28th of August 2018. Any points of clarification of those minutes? No? All right, can I have a mover for those minutes too, please? Moved by Councillor Williamson, seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. 3.3, the extraordinary council meeting on the 4th of September. Any clarification of those minutes? Okay, if that's the case, can I have a move, please, Councillor Hickman? Thank you. Second by Councillor Truman. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Right, 4.1, the Fred committee, held on the 4th of September. Any points? Moved by Councillor Boddy, seconded by Councillor Hickman.
Chairman, matters arising from those minutes. In regards of the Lake Terrace parking restrictions, is that being policed at the moment or not? Because that was one of the issues that was raised. I don't know. I don't know.
Signs are up. Whether there's compliance, regarding compliance on Lake Terrace parking. Has there been any infringements or anything?
So yeah, sorry, the signs are up, but as yet there's not enforcement control.
Is that obviously it's a night activity? So will that be to our independent contractors or?
Yes, we're just working out how just logistics and getting that training sorted out to be able to enforce that action.
Okay, so when any councillors get any calls, do they call Senja, correct, our current contractor?
That's correct, yeah, so after hours it goes
After hours, okay. Cool.
Just one more question, Mr. Chairman, in regards of the Kinloch Golf Course. I believe there's a fence going up. I don't know whether that's come through council or not, and I'm not even sure of the cost. It's to stop balls going into a neighbour's property, but the fence has been there for some months, but I don't think it's been through any of our committees.
Through the chair, that fence I understand is not going up. We found another solution for the balls.
Could I ask Councillor Jolins what that solution would be?
It's to do with some golf nets on the other side of the fence. The golf club is taking care of it.
They golf but don't use any balls.
At least someone's seen sense.
That's a Roseanne
Well done.
Jollins, previous professional golfer in her day.
Through the chair, I did play golf when I was very good.
Wow, okay, cool. Can we get confirmed by the Patararoo Golf Club?
Through the chair, I'm actually in the media as getting a hole in one.
Oh my God, okay. That's my case. Okay, where are we up to, Shane? 4.2. Ordinary Turangi Tongariro Community Board meeting on the 12th of June. That's one before, yeah. All right, do we have any matters arising from those minutes? No? I'll have a mover, please. Moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Stewart. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Taupo Airport Authority Committee meeting on the 24th of July. Any points of clarification on those minutes? No, could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Thank you very much, Councillor Jolland. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right, ordinary Turangi Tongariro Community Board meeting on the 14th of August. Okay. Mover, please, for those minutes. Councillor Kingy, thank you. Councillor Stewart. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Ordinary Kinloch Representative Group meeting on the 16th of August. It's 46, 4.5. Have any points of clarification regarding Kinloch?
Yeah, just through the chair, I just found it of interest that our Waikato Regional Councillor turned up to update the Kinloch Committee, but we don't see her at council level, and I just wondered why that engagement is with a particular area of the district and not the entire.
Through the chair, I can answer that one. It was in regard to a particular request from the Kinloch community regarding foreshore erosion and some developments that were happening in that area, so she came at their request.
Okay, is that being moved to, move that, seconded by Councillor Hickman, the 16th of August meeting. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, new 4.6 will be the sculpture proposal, the tunneler. Has everyone got a table copy here? So this has been through, just to confirm, it's been through the Turangi Tongariro Community Board. It's regarding unbudgeted expenditure up to $5,500 towards the sculpture installation. Does anyone have any questions or queries? Obviously, I'd just like to acknowledge Mr. Andrew Hemmer here this afternoon, the chair of the board. Tēnā koe, Andrew. Thank you very much for coming up today. Oh, sorry. Yes, okay.
I have a brother called Andrew, that's the problem.
Have you?
I do, yes.
How did that work? Okay, so the board were completely happy about this, obviously, with the recommendation there. We haven't got a photo of it, but so you asked me.
Councillor King has shown me a photograph of it, your worship. It's pretty impressive.
I'm sorry, just through the chair, can I just ask a question? I'm fully in support of this, but I just wondered, just after what we went through with the giant bike, that the MOU between the sculpture donor and the council is complete before the work is done?
Yeah, it will be complete before handover.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or queries? Okay. Been moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Park, that we ratify this resolution presented to us today. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, Councillor Body, sorry.
Before you do, Mr. Chairman, I have a small problem because I want to try and be consistent. Because if I vote for this, because that's a mate of yours, and I didn't vote for the other 5,500 for the other one. For the first time since I've been a councillor, I'm abstaining from the vote. At the last meeting, I attempted to try and get an arrangement that I'd pick up the cost of that plaque or the lane of the whatever, and I'd be paid back. And as Alan Manhattan pointed out quite correctly, maybe that's not a just thing we can do. The fact that we're over budget, this would make it by $10,000 or $11,000. If I was assured that it would come out of next year's budget, so already 10 grand has gone from that, I'd vote in favour, but I'm going to abstain if that's not the case.
I believe it's sort of ready to go, isn't it? Has it been made, this particular the statues there? Yep, ready to go. So Councillor Body's suggesting that you'd want to wait till next.
Would go in, but I believe that the funding would come from next year's sculpture budget. If I had that insurance, I'd vote in favour.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Is there any appetite for Councillor Body's amendment? No. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now, who ended up moving that? Councillor Harvey. Sorry. How could I forget you, Rosie? And seconded by Councillor Park. Cool. That we fund this, the installation of this tunneler. All right. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. And Councillor Body abstain. Right. 5.1. Adoption of the annual report 2017 and 2018. Page number 53. We have Jeanette. Hey, good afternoon, Jeanette and Tanya.
Hi.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
All right.
So good afternoon, councillors. It's always nice to be here on an adoption day. So today we are seeking adoption of the annual report and the full summary report. We just have one very small change that we would like to make. Now, apologies, I don't have the reference on diligent, but on page 26 of the full annual report, under our little story box, consents on the up, our final sentence says that we have, despite this, our team managed to keep up with the pace. Only one building consent went over our 20-day processing target. That's actually incorrect. We did achieve that performance measure, so we are just going to rectify that sentence to say that we did achieve that performance measure. So that's, just wanted to highlight that change to your attention.
Thanks, Tanya. Anything else?
Did you?
I don't have anything else, but obviously I'm open to any questions. we did bring the draft to you at a workshop before audit arrived, so.
Okay, any questions of Jeanette or Tanya from the councillors?
I was not at that meeting, so this is a new read. In regards of, and once again I've got two lots of pages, it's either page 20 or 22 of my written agenda, new projects this year that weren't included in the long-term plan.
Question what? Sorry.
Well, it's the Tiverton down road, and I've made a note here of Norman Smith Street because I thought that was part of the long-term plan. Though it's in one part of the agenda, it's not shown. Another one, it is under a different name. So.
I didn't quite understand the question, I'm sorry, so could you please rephrase that again?
Under the new projects not included in the LTP, I've written in the column Norman Smith Street under transport. Wasn't Norman Smith Street part of the long-term plan?
So it hasn't been included in there, but so the Norman Smith Street stuff is in the 2018 long-term plan, whereas the annual report is referring to the 2015 long-term plan.
That's the 15, like, it's very, very small reading. 1525, is that the reason? It's the last plan?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. A couple more, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Once again, page 52 or 54, whichever one you're looking at, transport schedule of expenditure. And this may be a similar answer. It's got no shared footpath, Whoriwaka, Rainbow Point. That was done in the last year.
Without having access to the detail, Councillor, I can't answer your question. However, that schedule of the capital expenditures is based against what was in the annual plan for last year. So if it was a bow wave item, it won't be included because it relates to the previous year.
Relates to the year that we've just finished. Would that be right? 17-18.
Yeah.
17-18 year.
So if it wasn't in the annual plan for 72 planned capital expenditure for the annual plan, we're reporting against the annual plan for 17-18. So anything that is being brought forward from prior years is not included on that schedule. But I don't know if it was brought forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it was included in the 16-17 year. That was mentioned then, but it was still being done the year we've just finished, hasn't it?
Yes, it was, but it wasn't in the annual plan for 17-18. The purpose of this schedule is to show the capital expenditure against the annual plan. Bow wave is not part of the annual plan.
Then that makes it confusing, but no, thank you.
Yeah,
I think I've raised this before, Mr. Chairman. It's on page 157. In regards to, there were no significant events after balance date that required reporting. Was there anything done after the balance date as of the 1st of July? Anything new come in?
There may have been small things, but they, in terms of significance, they have to actually be quite significant. The only time we've ever had anything on that note is when we approved the East Taupo arterial on the at the July council meeting, and that was a pretty significant project. So something for $50,000 wouldn't be on there because it's not significant.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Clarence is here from Audit if you would like to hear from him.
Yeah, good afternoon, Clarence. Sorry, I didn't acknowledge you earlier. Nice to have you here, Audit New Zealand.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, Councillors. I actually brought the assistant manager with me this time. Instead of bringing Medea, I thought it's more useful to bring the assistant manager. So, thanks for having us here today. It is my privilege to present my two unmodified audit opinions. It's on the full audit, full annual report as well as on the summary annual report. So I won't go into exactly too much detail. What I thought of doing is just to highlight what my opinion actually covers off. It is, I think in the pack there's a copy of the opinion unsigned. So once we get the signed annual report, we will just check all the page numbers and making sure that, because in our opinion it's quite specific on the pages that we refer to. But we make sure that it fairly represents, first of all, the balance sheet. Then we look at the old days, we used to call it the profit and loss. Now it's the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure. We look at your cash flow statement, look at the funding impact statements, we look at the cost of service statements, look at the group of activities, the funding impact statements, and making sure that all of that, those different statements comply with generally accepted accounting practice. It's just important it's important to remember that you are responsible for the preparation of the accounts. We just look at the compliance with legislation and generally accepted accounting practice, and that's what my opinion states. So I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm saying yes, it's correctly reflected. And in line with previous years, we looked at your control environment again. Once again, we formed the view that your control environment as a whole is efficient, and we can actually rely on it, with the exception of your expenditure system. That was highlighted during our interim audit, where we found some management override. So for that part of the audit, the expenditure side of it, we actually did a substantive audit, which means we looked into more transactions. We didn't rely on controls as such. So it's a bit change in our audit approach. Part of the management override, obviously, we also look at your journal transactions, making sure that we use data analytics to score some of the journals, and then we look at the journals of interest to make sure that there's no bias in how those were passed. There's nothing to report on that, fortunately. It's always good when we're comfortable with the end result. We also looked at your information technology environment. We look at the general controls around that. So we look for the IT environment. We look at your security over your network and applications. We look at management of your physical hardware. We look at change management, data management, operations management, configuration management, and management of problems and incidents. So overall, we're comfortable that you have the processes in place for your IT environment. So that's also, I mean, we normally do that in our interim audit, but we then, with the final audit, we follow up on that to make sure that it's been in place for the full year. So it's always good to know that you have a good control environment in place. The big things that we looked at this year was highlighted in our audit plan. Things like your property, plant and equipment revaluations. This year, council revalued the Three Waters infrastructure. There was a total movement of about $10 million, and that goes through other comprehensive income. Although it's on your statement of revenue and expenditure, it is below the line, so it moves into equity, into your revaluation reserves. This year there was a $10 million movement. We looked at the competence of the valuers. We looked at the assumptions that they used. We looked at the data that they performed the evaluation on, and based on all of that, we're happy to say and to report that we're happy with the movements and the disclosure of that. We also looked at something quite late in the piece. This year, you received quite a bit of development revenue. Most of it, or not most of it, about 50% of it was under a deed of arrangement and not under your development contribution policy. Because it became, the total value of that was close to our performance materiality, we looked into those arrangements a bit more in detail. We found that technically, although it is they did have an arrangement for development, it's not development contributions, and therefore it should be split out in the accounts and should be reflected under other revenue. The advantage of that, having it reflected out, is actually when you look into your prudence regulations, it actually works into your favour, because with your prudence regulations you exclude your development contributions, where this is classified as other revenue. But I just thought it's something to highlight, that although it's technically for the same thing, it's technically not the same thing. So and that's why we had to make the change in the reporting of that. We also looked at your non-financial reporting. There's two things that we'll be reporting on in the report to the governors. That will be something on the building consents, just the vetting period of when the clock starts for the 20 days. Is it pretty much when you receive the full document? And the other one that we'll be reporting on is the wastewater fault response times. It's just how it's calculated, from what point in time the clock starts again. Then we also looked at sector-wide and other matters. There's nothing specific to report. I mean, there we look at things like your rating, compliance with the Rating Act. We looked at, there's a wide range of stuff. There's nothing that I thought was necessary to highlight to you. So, in all, it will be reported in our normal report. We're also looking at the debenture trust deed at the moment. It's just another assurance report that we have to issue. That is all your borrowings. There's also a report that we issued to the trustees of the trust deed and to council. It's just the compliance with your, I can quote the number, it's your debenture trust deed in accordance with clauses 12.2.6. So if you're interested, that's based on that paragraph that we'll be reporting to you. Then we also looked at your financial reporting and prudence regulations. As I said, it's also covered in my audit opinion. Those are the lovely green and orange graphs that you see. So we made sure that the calculation of that is in accordance with the prescribed calculations and all of that. So that's we're happy with that. And then lastly, I would just like to thank Neil and Jeanette and Alan and the whole finance team for their assistance during this audit. I think the audit went really well, normally really well prepared, and things like the late raising of the issue with the development contributions. I mean, it takes quite an effort to get it to stick to the timelines, and yeah, and just the way in which that was handled. I really appreciate that. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Clarence. All right, and thank you, Liz, for coming down today as well. Lovely to have you here. Good to see you as a boss after all, which is good. All right. Any questions of Clarence or Liz? Councillor Body.
Clarence, thank you. You mentioned the not development contribution. No, the development. Was it the 20-day consents?
Vetting period.
So we see that we've achieved whatever it happens to be, but does it also look at the one that gets to the 19th day and starts again for another 20? That in the document doesn't make that overly clear, so that effectively it wouldn't be all of them getting the 20 days. It might be a series of 20s. How does that work?
There's a prescribed format of how you do it, so the clock stops and starts.
Yes.
So you have to do it within the 20 days. So if you stop it on day 19 or day 2 because you haven't received the information, the clock stops.
You don't get an additional 20 days.
You don't get an additional 20 days?
No.
That's not what I've been told.
No.
So
Starts again.
From day 1, all the days that it's actually with council complete, that counts to the 20 days.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, any other questions of Clarence?
Just through the
Councillor
chair.
Collins.
Just to clarify, in the interest that no question is a dumb question, can you just re-explain the deed of arrangement and DC's comment that you made again, please?
Yep. So with your DC policy, you actually cover off. Let me see exactly what I said, so that I don't say. So we noted that there were payments from subdivision developers for capital contributions carried out by council during the period that was charged under a deed of arrangement. Now, the deed of arrangements is a specific agreement with developers that that wants to develop in an area that's not covered under your DC policy. So in your DC policy, it actually refers to on page 6 that it says that you may enter into private development agreement. So it is in line with you allow yourself on your policy that you can enter into those agreements, but because it's not covered under the specific DC policy, the calculation of the contribution is different from under the DC policy. It's not only a deal of arrangement, and I think that Alan, you can jump in if I'm a bit off track. It's also more giving out responsibility, so that it's quite clear who's responsible to do what in that arrangement. So it's more than just the normal DC policy. So because it's not under your DC policy, it can't be classified as DC revenue based on the Local Government Act. It's just how the classification on your statement of revenue and expenditure, where that's reflected.
So what percentage of those contributions from developers was deed of arrangements versus DC? Are you able to find that? I can find that out.
It's in the region of about 50% in the current year. Yeah, more or less.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Terence and Liz. And I'll call Tanya and Jeanette back up. See if there's any final wrap-up questions. So Tanya, we've got a recommendation there that we adopt the annual report and approve it for release to the public, and also adopts the summary annual report and approves for release. So there's nothing else to add. Councillor Williamson.
Just one on page 198, one very small point. Story place is spelt without the E. I think it's quite important. Story place, yeah, on your report.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, like Delaney. That's a common one. As long as all the Delaney's are spelled right, that's the main thing. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williamson. All right, that's a wrap. Okay, could I have a mover, please, that we adopt this annual report? Councillor Jollins, thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Jollins, seconded by Councillor Hickley. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Lovely.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just while we're wrapping up, I would like to extend our thanks to the staff. That's a huge effort to do this annual report. We see here it's a pretty slimline document, but I know the team in front of you and a larger team behind them have worked quite hard day and night. So just want to acknowledge that as well.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. 5.2, Council's August performance report. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Your Worship. Obviously, one of the big issues for this month has been the discovery of asbestos in Waiora House, which you're fully aware of, and have had several briefings and communications through that process. Pretty happy with how that's going. It's all on track, and we've got the contractors in there at the moment clearing out, or starting that work. They're clearing out of that asbestos. Likewise, the other one that you're fully aware of is the Arrowsmith Avenue sinkhole. So that one is dare say, complete. The seal has gone on the road and has again been a very good process, which was unexpected. Obviously, issues like those two do take our staff away from their normal business and their normal run of work. They do take a lot of time, which will have a significant impact, particularly given that you've approved a capital works program for this year bigger than what we've ever had before. So I guess a little word of caution for us all is how unexpected things like this are going to impact on that work program going forward. Into the positive though, probably the one that I would like to highlight the most is our customer service team winning being awarded the best customer service team out of all the 78 councils in the country. Something that I think they and the whole organisation can be justifiably proud of. I think last year we were ranked number 68 and then up to 1 this year, so a monumental rise to success. So something that we can all take some pride in. Talking about Pride, hopefully, in I think 2 weeks' time, we're up for the Keep New Zealand Beautiful Awards for the most beautiful large town. So hopefully that sense of pride can continue through to there. Worship, I'll keep it to that, I think, and let the team go through the report.
Thanks.
Just through the chair, before we move off that page, like I understand that at a local level we can't do anything about the plastics, 3 through to 7. But I have to say that I'm really, really disappointed as a Kiwi that I know that China can't take this anymore, but that we're having no direction set or leadership from central government on this issue. So instead we're going to have 78 councils go about how that plastics 3 through to 7 go back into the landfills, and they'll all be managed in different ways. So years down the track we're going to end up with a small China issue of mismanagement of the rubbish. Also, I haven't seen anything come out of local government New Zealand about this. I've seen lots of climate change stuff, but this is far more important. And I don't mean to shoot the messenger at all, but I'm just really, really disappointed that this country doesn't have good leadership on this issue. I've finally got my children throwing every single plastic thing into a recycle bin, and now they're going to have to revert to throwing only like numbers 1 and 2, which I understand are the majority, but it's still a major, major disappointment. So I don't know if you can take that to Rural Provincial or the Mural Forum or what can be done, but I think we need to just say that we're disappointed, because it just really irks me. It's one of my pet hates.
So I think we share your frustrations, and I think you'll remember Brent Aiken's quote in the paper last week, which was something like a dagger to the heart, and I think that explains as staff how we feel. And it, as you say, it is out of our control and out of in fact New Zealand's control, and that China and then subsequently other Asian countries stopped taking these things because they were getting inundated. The response from the government is very much around product stewardship, so trying to work with the Packaging Council and other organisers to change at the front of the top of the cliff. But that stuff takes a long time to implement, and to get change, it's going to take a long time. But you're absolutely right. It's a massive issue for New Zealand Inc.
Just thank you, Mr. CEO, and also happy birthday.
Okay,
just
Ellen, financial.
Sorry, David.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Stewart.
Just adding on from what Anna was saying, because it is looking at the stewardship and the suppliers supplying things that aren't in plastic, everyone could actually do something about that by just lobbying their supermarket manager to let him know or her know that they don't want to buy that stuff if it's not in something that they can actually dispose of properly. Just a thought.
I noticed you go shopping now and you have your plastic-free bags, but you get home and you're taking plastic and cellophane and stuff out of the bag, right? So.
Councillor Boddy?
Just on that, thank you, Councillor Part, for raising it. What is there any economic loss to the fact we can't recycle that plastic from 3 to 7?
Not an economic loss. In fact, if you're looking just financially, you could argue there was an economic gain because more tonnage is going to go to the landfill, which means that we will get more income.
Just through the chair, just to add to that, we passed, we've got a brand new waste minimisation strategy, I think it was called, plan. Do we have to revisit that in light of this decision?
All right, Alan, financials.
Yeah, thank you. It's quite a challenge actually to get August financials to this particular meeting when you've just been through what the team's done as far as the annual report. What actually is of assistance is that there's no major variances to where we were budgeting to be at the end of August. So if we can sort of take these numbers as read, and hopefully it's a positive path going forward, but who's to tell month by month what's actually happening. But in general, the income from activities, which is your regulatory fees and your venues, etc., is up. And some of the other variances are more in respect of timing, because some of the budgets are spread evenly over the year. Others they try to phase, but it's just a bit of variance. So if I move on to investments, you would have received a monthly Treasury Management Report as at the 30th of June. This doesn't form part of the annual report, but we thought that you needed to have a final version which aligned with the annual report, so hence that's the reason why at this late stage you've got the 30th of June Treasury Management Report. But if you look at the 31st of August Treasury Management Report, we're on track to meet all our requirements, and once again we're outperforming our investment budgets. You can see that we've been a little bit more active in the equity field. What we actually do in the equities is when we buy, we have a sales strategy, so as when our return hits a certain level, we'll sell no matter how long. So we look at APA, for example, we made 17.5% return in 7 months. BHP 22.7% return, but it took 2 years, and the Brambles we made 22.7% and it took 1 year. So it's just part of that strategy of not buying and holding, but buying and selling. So you'll get variances month by month depending on what the markets are doing.
Cool. All right. Any questions about it? Councillor Boddy?
Well, if you were the CEO of O2 Milk, you sold last week. But who's to tell? The market's pretty volatile at the moment.
All right. Thanks, Alan. Democracy and planning. Services. Brian.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. Alan mentioned the regulatory area in terms of revenues. There is an agenda item that follows this report that may have a minor impact on that, depending on your decision on the registration. A couple of things just to point out here. On page 281 of diligent, we talk about body-worn cameras for the animal control team, dog control guys. Still waiting just to sort out some IT requirements. We're still hoping to have that in place and operable by mid-October, but just we note about if there are any other issues in the IT area, it may just delay it slightly. A couple of other things from other areas under my purview. Civil Defence, just for your information, the group controller for our Waikato group has tendered his resignation and will be leaving at the end of this week to take up a role with Air New Zealand. That's right, yes. So he's had lots of jokes around that. So there will be a new group controller in the near future in that space. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Yesterday we had a visit from 3 regional emergency management advisors and the chief executive, Councillor Parker, as the chair of the committee, and myself and others met with them. They came here to talk to us about how we do civil defence in our district. There's a very positive view of that approach that we have in terms of governance. That you have a committee, and that it flows down from there in terms of how that whole community interaction works. So very positive meeting with them. They've actually indicated they want to bring all of their emergency management advisors around the country back to Taupo to have a look at that process that we have here. So quite a positive thing there.
Just through the chair, can I just add, I think that Mr. Fox just undersold it somewhat right there and then. There's been a huge a technical advisory group report that's been done, and it's taken like the best part of probably 3 years, yet Taupo are like this amazing example of how it should be done, how from grassroots right through to full council governance we've got it right and we do a really, really good job, and how we've got such a resilient communities in our district. So yeah, sorry Mr. Fox, but you should be very proud of one of your areas, and I think Gareth was there as well, and he'd probably concur.
I am very proud, but I just didn't want to go to that level of degree. Just on that tag review that you talked about, Councillor Park, really there's a whole flavour of regionalisation around that potentially, so we're waiting to see what that looks like for us in terms of what influence it has at a local level. But I think it's clear from our perspective that our interaction with communities and supporting communities is going to be paramount anyway, whatever happens. So we're waiting with bated breath on where that goes. And Mr. Connon is smiling quite a bit because he's been told that he can go and pick up his Unimogs at Trentham. Yeah, very soon. Regulatory workloads are continuing, as you can see from last year. Just in that space, and it's probably something right across council really, we are considering and planning for potential retirements in this area next year. Wait and see, but we need to be planning for succession and thinking about things early in that space. And we're in that space now. Health and safety, we'll be working with unions and employee representatives on an employee participation agreement. We have an existing one, which is dated in terms of new legislation, so we will be looking to have that discussion very soon. And one thing from the senior leadership team and the Chief Executive is we're fully aware of our responsibilities in this space, and we'll be looking for quite some flexibility about being able to respond as quickly as we need to in this area going forward. Your Worship, if I may talk about that meeting we had yesterday on Wood First with Jane Arnott and Mark Taylor, the GM of Tenon. Jane, as people will know, is a strong proponent and advocate for a Wood First policy amongst councils. I have to say, from my perspective, it was a very interesting meeting, and certainly the story of Wood, as Mr. Taylor from Tenon explained it to us, was quite enlightening. The intention is to bring a paper back to you again to revisit that discussion you had about 18 months, maybe 2 years, I can't remember exactly when, and perhaps provide more information that will help with that decision-making process. At the time, and Councillor Johns, I think you may have to refresh my memory here, we looked at sustainability on a broader picture. That was the sort of the area you went down at that stage. I think what we heard yesterday might still be of interest to you now, and that's why I'm suggesting we bring that item back with more information.
Through the Chair, my understanding from that discussion was we'd made a decision that it didn't sit in the procurement policy part of our decision making. However, we were going to have a look at the wider sustainability story, which when you take Councillor Park's comments about plastic and some of the other things, I think there's probably some merit in looking at that strategy. But the direction at the time was the procurement decision process wasn't.
Yeah, and maybe sustainability wasn't the exact avenue, because talking to Jane yesterday, there was probably a broader discussion around Wood First as an initiative. So that was, I don't know if you wish, whether you want to add comments to that. But
yeah, covered it well. I think just the councillors need to be fully briefed on it. I know we did have it at ENA. Yes, yeah. So, but I'd like to put it in front of the councillors by way of an item, but perhaps Mr. Arnott could present in the public forum or during that particular item. Yeah.
Legal area, Mr. McKelly's purview. As he would say, business is still good. Plenty going on in that space. In the insurance area, we're heavily involved in our renewal process with our brokers. And the clear message we're getting from our brokers is that the insurance markets are hardening. So it can usually only mean one thing. So we're still in that process now. So all the councils put their information together. That goes to Lloyd's of London via our brokers, and we'll see what the markets come back with. On the internal audit front, and lastly, we are just scoping the procurement review with PwC. It was part of the audit and risk direction, so that work is that draft in terms of references being looked at currently. And that's it from me, Your Worship.
Lovely, thank you, Brian. Any questions, Brian? Okay, community facilities.
Kia ora koutou, just moving into community facilities. There's a couple of reports that are coming through. Some of the points not raised, but in the interests of Otumu Heke has been hugely popular. If I would use a street term, it's being absolutely smashed. The under-19s tournament made regular trips from different teams, and likewise some of the global games teams frequented the area, and the locals, the comment made by Fraser was the locals have returned, which Patu were very happy to see. So just a note on that one. In terms of some of the other projects that are noted in there, you still have the reserve management plans for Motutere. A first meeting of Ngāti Te Rangiita and Mr Tilton has happened. Those conversations are underway, and likewise the development of the Māori Heritage Study, which will deal with some of the issues that were raised with yourselves at Taupo. So that work is underway. Likewise, you'll see that there's a whole lot of OPEX projects in there, some that are working through our project management projects framework, which is closing off those projects and working through the process to review. And as we move through the year, those will continue to happen as we move through the different phases.
Just Dylan Otamaheki, the cafe concessionaire, any indication of when that would be likely to be open?
So they're just working through a couple of issues to get the container up to date and up to scratch before they go through a procurement process to identify a suitable concessionaire. But that's very much in their priority list to get done as soon as possible.
Yeah, you see people hovering around, want to have a glass of water or a cup of tea or whatever. So yeah, good. All right, that's an independently run.
That's by Patuiwi Trust, nothing to do with council.
Okay.
Sorry, Your Worship. The other point I wanted to was asked to bring to your attention was the Suto exhibition, and the fact that in the first couple of weeks there's a noted increase of patronage and people coming to visit. I'm looking forward to the next school holidays, where some of the additional activities attached to the exhibition will also come in, which is part of our education activities team, working alongside Jackie and some of our members of the Chinese community to bring more of the culture, of the Chinese culture, in celebration of the Faith and Life exhibition.
Cool. All right, thank you, Dylan. Yes.
Just for my own interest, and it may have already been mentioned, the next CBD intersection upgrade, which street is it going to, which section?
So through the chair, it's down on Rural Payne Street, and it's going to be an intersection to
Rural Payne to Ferry Tower. Okay, thank you. Just in regards to the hot stream cultural, I received a phone call from, and I want this recorded, from Hinimara Henderson just prior to his opening, that suggested to me, she used the excuse of who was my gardener to make the phone call because we don't have a gardener. She made the comment to me that I'd voted against the project. I informed her in no uncertain terms I hadn't. I have drawn out of the system that resolution that was passed. It was unanimous. She's away at the moment, so I'm going to go back and ask where did she hear that from. The reason I wasn't at the opening, I was heading to Taranaki for 2 80th birthdays, otherwise I would have been there. So from what I've heard, it's very, very good, and I'd like to congratulate the team, but I want to set the record straight. I did vote for it's to proceed. Thank you.
All right.
Your Worship.
I just had a quick question.
Williamson.
You go.
Your Worship. I attended the Lake Taupo Catchment Committee meeting last week as the alternate on behalf of Councillor Dollins, and just gave a bit of a brief update on the Tonkin Taylor report with regarding to the erosion program around Kuratau of the regional council. Speaker, they're very happy with the relationship, the arrangement with under the flood and erosion strategy forthcoming with the works program.
Just on that one, Your Worship, we've got a meeting with Te Wharetō coming up in the near future, which hopefully we'll get some progress on that.
All right, water. Good afternoon, Mr. Strongman.
Afternoon all. Just a couple of things on the water. I just want to reiterate what Gareth has previously said. We do run pretty lean teams here. We've got a pretty ambitious capital works program. So when something like Waiora House and something like Arrowsmith happens, it does take a fair bit of the team away. But needless to say, we are still on track to deliver the percentage increase on all of those projects. You'll note in water, we do have 24 projects to deliver this year, and we're already in execute for 11 of those. So we're moving through them pretty quickly. You will note on the front page there's nothing in renewals. That's because we're doing a lot of work in that space and doing investigation and some analysis. but we think we'll be going out to market for the majority of that renewals money to be spent in Tūrangi, and that'll be about 5 to 5.5 kilometres of pipe renewals in Tūrangi. So we're pretty much on track in that space. Just to hit up on a couple of the red indicator ones there. So Waitanui water supply, it's red again because the completion date, it's still possible to be completed in November, although we are in the hands of those getting the delivery of some of the infrastructure there in the space. It's also tied up with the voluntary administration of service engineering, and we're still working through that with everyone in that space. And then Bonchel Park water bore, it's just noted that we are expected to complete that in October, but we thought we'd complete that a little bit earlier. And Motuapa Reservoir renewal is in the same boat. It's to do with that voluntary administration. So happy to take any questions on water, or I can just move on to the next one.
Good. So Waitānui's pretty sussed now, pretty sorted. No, the new.
Yeah. So through Chair, all the pipe work is in.
Yeah.
And it is ready to rumble. But we haven't got the reservoir in there, which provides the suitable pressure for those individuals down the end there. So we need to wait for that before we turn it on and liven it up.
Okay, cool. Bonchel Park water board, that's been around as long as my career's been around. So it'd be nice to get a solution on that at some stage.
The team don't disagree. Yes. Yeah. We're looking forward to finishing that one off. Yeah.
All right. That's the body. You enjoyed that?
I'll have some questions when I've got the hard copy of the long-term plan, because there's a couple of ones in here that aren't mentioned in the long-term plan, but once I've got the hard copy, we can have a talk.
I look forward to those.
I'll look just because we're meeting quite regularly, it's not going to happen all the time.
No, that's right.
All right, thank you, Kevin.
Transportation, again, just a heads up there, we've got 31 projects to deliver in this space. We're in 7 in execution. We're doing a lot of planning at the moment, and got 13 that are being planned through. I don't think there's any notable reds there. There's an orange there on Poipi Road widening. That's just we need to sort out with Chorus about putting some services down before we go and widen it. Otherwise we'll widen it and they'll dig it up straight away.
Kevin, while we're on this one, just want to note there was a letter to the editor in today's Taupo Times about a footpath down Lowell Place, and questioning where that came from. I can let councillors know that was as a result of a request from the Access Taupo Mobility Group, and it's linked to Lions Walk up with the Old State Highway, and it has been on our program for quite some time.
Okay. Just on that matter, I went and saw Mr. Ogden, I think his name is today, and I raised the issue with him about access because I'm on that committee. I did that walk with, I think it's Miss Haile Selassie, I think it is, and the guy Cockburn in the motorised chair. I can't remember discussing that footpath. The gentleman concerned was a little bit surprised that there's a footpath on the other side of the road that goes down the side of the hotel. Why would you want to put a footpath over the services that are underground there now? There's water and gas and things like that. I had to agree with him to some degree because there's already a footpath there. So I'm wondering whether we discuss it again with access. One of the issues at the time was to come off the Lions Walk to go to that CAF, and those people were quite prepared. They would come out and put a ramp down so someone in a wheelchair would be able to. But for putting a footpath down on the side that would be less used than the other side, to me doesn't make sense, hence my visit today.
So again, I asked that question of our engineers through Mr. Worship, and there's a couple of reasons. One is that the other side doesn't link with the entrance onto the Lions Walk because there's the transmitter box in the way with the generator, so you can't link it back through, so a wheelchair etc can't get through. And the other part of it is that the motel side of the road, which is a cobbled path, there's the let-downs for the vehicle crossings there, so that's on quite a steep angle, so a wheelchair, it isn't appropriate for a wheelchair. So I've asked those very questions, which is why the agreement was the other side. The other flip side of that is, as you know, and from that walk that you did that time, there's plenty of other spaces on that Lions Walk that as you know, is not up to grade at the moment, which is, a lot of that's going to be fixed as a result of the project that you've got for widening that path over the next 2 years.
Can I ask Councillor Body, just was Mr. Ogden advised that that was going to go in, or?
Yes, he was. He had a visit.
Great.
He was advised. as I wasn't there, I'm not sure how a couple of comments he made to me about dealing with the council.
Sure.
I think that's a sidebar. It was just the fact that he couldn't see the sense of ripping up good grass to put down that may not be needed. So thanks, Gareth, for the explanation.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councillor Body.
Kevin. Consistency of what we name things. In the transport, it's got Norman Smith Street signals. In the long-term plan, it states Northern Access Upgrade. I wonder whether there be consistency, because if I read the long-term plan, it doesn't mention the lights. This one does. So which are we going to use? Norman Smith Street lights or Northern Access Upgrade? The figures are the same.
Yeah, I think what we should use then is Norman Smith Street lights, because that is what we're putting in now. That's the other one was a bit before it was decided on which way we go moving forward. So yes, yeah, thank you.
So lights it is?
Lights, yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right, Kevin, where were we? Were we transport?
We're still in transport, and there's just a couple of orange and reds ones there. Hooker Falls footpath, we're waiting for a developer to finish their entranceway before we do a footpath, otherwise they'll do some damage to a new footpath. Marlborough Road, we're still waiting on services, but we've been told that they will be going in soon. We can put our footpath over those, and then LED lights is just the same as it has been. We're waiting on servicing. We have started that predominantly in the Acacia Bay and Nukahoe area to date.
Okay.
Top end from the steps up towards Acacia Heights Drive, is it called? At the top of the right hand side?
Yeah, it gets very narrow there.
Around there, yeah. Where there's lots of people generally walking, yeah.
Kevin, you mentioned 31 projects. Is there? Can you give us an indication of how many external consultants, or how many projects is our staff handling 100%, or how many consultants are you using?
So through the chair, we always tend to use consultants in those areas where we haven't got the expertise or haven't got the resources to do that. But our team will be over all of these. The only one that we will be looking at, and it'll be a secondment, so we're actually asking someone from WSP, which is the old Opus, to come and sit in a bum seat in our office to look after the Norman Street traffic lights, because that one's high profile, and we need to dedicate someone pretty much permanently to that role earlier on. So that's one that we're using there. The other ones we are using is, I'm just trying to think of what is the percentage. We've got a pretty ambitious works program moving forward. And we're, our teams are relatively small, so I would say half of them, or over half of them, have input from others. Our guys are project managers, coordinating all the stuff. We don't have a design team to do the design. We do the simple stuff in-house, and we certainly can critique any designs because they're capable, but we don't have draftsmen, we don't have the design team, we don't have the CAD in place to do all that work. Okay. Yep.
All right. Councillor Body.
Jim, some time ago, probably a week or 10 days, I wrote to Mr. Green in regards to LED lights and health and safety issue that was raised to me from the American Medical Association. I wasn't overly impressed with the reply I got, not from Mr. Green, but from my friend. To me, it was an issue that I think needs to be addressed, because while it was rightly pointed out by Mr. Strong when there was 5 different criteria, it's to do with the 4 colours or 5 colours that are actually in the lights that have a tendency to damage the retina, whether you're driving a car or walking the streets. And I think it's an issue I raised. Have we been to the New Zealand Medical Association to see whether they have evidence like that? Secondly, in regards of the lights and the darkness, we had an issue where I rang the police the other night, but because of the new lights I couldn't read the number plate of the car without putting myself, which could have been in harm's way, so I didn't get a turnout. The old lights you could easily see them, but that's a sidebar. But the one on the lights and damage to retinas I think needs to be looked at.
Right. Okay,
so through the chair, we can ask NZTA that they've rolled these out and they've recommended these types of lights all across New Zealand.
Yeah.
So we can certainly ask them whether they've considered that. I'm not sure they would have, but we need to ask the question. We certainly haven't got the expertise to talk about the medical conditions caused by LED lights. Yeah.
Okay. Why did the criminal get away? Oh, so you couldn't get the rego. One number. next time I think ring Barry. You can chase.
He was in the car.
All right. So sorry, through the chair.
Wastewater.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. If I can have a call as well, because I'd love to watch that.
Sorry.
Can I have a call as well, because I'd love to watch that.
Just a comment with what Councillor Boddy is saying, because leaded lights, they've got in cars,
Yeah.
they're all over. If there is a problem, I mean, it's not only us New Street lights, it's about everything. So, yeah, well,
Okay. We'll get that confirmed with the medical. Right, wastewater.
So wastewater again, just to give a heads up, we've probably got the most projects in this area. We've got 33 moving forward for this year, and we have just under half of them being constructed right now in various areas. And just want to highlight, well, I suppose I don't need to highlight it. We had some issues out at Kinloch, but there's a team that worked pretty hard on the wastewater treatment plant, communication with the affected parties around the perimeter of that. The landscaping work that has been promised is majority of that has been completed, and I think for now we are moving forward on that, and we've had a lot of learnings out of that project to make sure that we don't end up in that space again.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I'll refrain from commenting, but yeah.
Mr. Chairman, we've had quite a number of I've had a number of letters of congratulations from those neighbours and the community representatives out there in more recent times saying thank you for how it's been recovered. So it certainly wasn't a good position to be in, but the team have recovered very well.
So we've, I think we recovered reasonably well in that space, but not to get into it. So we do learn from these. The same project manager spent a whole lot of time knocking on doors at Whakamotu because we're doing a wastewater thing there. So we do have a contract administration and contract kind of learnings forum that works across everything that we do. So we're trying not to repeat things again. I'll probably take the rest as read for the wastewater unless there's any other questions.
Wastewater. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Solid waste.
I think it's been well documented about the grade 3 through to 7. It's really the only thing to comment on that, and for stormwater as well, unless there's any specific questions.
Stormwater?
Nothing different.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Thank you. All right. Economic development.
Yeah, I've got a big blank on that one. The agencies are coming, I think, next month to give quarterly update. We're rocking on with the airport work we're doing at the moment. That's on track to have a report to present here November time. The figures actually, when we've actually analysed the numbers coming through there, is actually quite phenomenal. The growth we're seeing in that in here. I hadn't realised how big it was. We're doing a lot of planning, I guess, and let's say specific questions. It's fairly business as usual we're doing in this area.
Okay, any questions of John?
Maybe
Councillor
John,
Rankin?
The airport might be one that you want to...
Yeah, he just mentioned the airport.
Yeah, I mentioned
the
the
airport.
so
Airbus are doing there.
Yeah, November we should be in here to have the conversation, which is quite a detailed bit of work actually. Yeah.
I just wanted to make the comment that Rotorua got a massive injection from the Regional Development Fund, and bearing in mind we're asking for a fraction of that for our initial developments, I hope that that's looking very positive for us. I was jealous when I heard the announcement.
Our time will come.
I hope so.
Our time will come.
So I think the announcement that came through yesterday, I think it was, or Monday, in terms of Rotorua, which is a significant amount of money for CBD lakefront upgrades. I'd say yes, $26 million I'd say watch this space, and that civic precinct project business case will include many of those same elements that they're looking at there.
Just through the chair, can I just add to that Bike Taupo were very successful recently in obtaining $550,000 from the Tourism Infrastructure Fund. So even though you might say these are blank, there are lots of things happening within the community with our active groups. And so, and I believe, Your Worship, you'll be officially opening underpass with White Taupo in a couple of weeks.
Cool. John, just back to the airport. Do we actually have to set? You know, like I don't want it to be delayed another month. If you know what I mean. So, is it worth calling a special ordinary just to give it a final tick off, or if we can fit it into the calendar?
We need to workshop it, because I think it's some of the stuff that's coming out of it. I think I'll come back to you on that, because I think we do need to set a date, and I'm totally with you, because we need to actually, you know, get this.
Shane's going to run out of money shortly.
Oh. Yeah.
Well, perhaps not him, but the government.
Yeah, I'll just make a note of that, because I just want to make sure we don't miss the airbids deliver when they're due to. I don't. Yeah, if there's a delay, I don't. But we'll probably put something in the diary just to signal it, because I think we really need to have a discussion. It's about quantum, and that's the discussion that needs to be had in here.
It is important, like you. I met Alison Rowe yesterday. One of the first things she said to me, when you get to the new airport.
Yeah.
So it is important.
Exactly. Lovely lady she was too. Wasn't she nice? Wasn't she a nice lady? Yeah. Councillor Harvey. Not officially yet, but yeah, not officially yet. You might have seen a bit of traffic in the media regarding the Rotorua one, which has been sold. So that's the only confirmation we've had. And thank you, Councillor Rankin, for putting up Alison Rowe. That was accommodating here. It was lovely. Yeah. All right. Where have you gone, John? Haven't quite finished with you. No, that's it. No, that's right. No problem at all. Anything else? That's it. Okay. The CEO's report, or whatever it's called. So thank you, Mr. Green, for that, and members of the senior management team. Could I have a mover, please, that we receive the council performance report? Councillor Rankin, thank you. Councillor Williamson, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. 5.3 dog control fees for the financial year 2018-2019. 18. Ooh, steady. This looks serious. Right, Brian, have you sorted it out?
Kick off. I really enjoyed Eli's presentation this morning about the dog park, and I've been reading his presentation again. And it says, it is scientifically proven that dogs relieve stress and lower blood pressure. In the short time that I've been in the job for you doing this, Eli, we've got a problem. Yes, I understand that. So look, first I'm going to just introduce Ross McDonald, who leads the operational side on the ground for our compliance area. So some of you will have met Ross through the Fred Committee, but others may not. So I think, Ross, this is your first time before full council? Yes. So,
nice to see you, Ross.
So I'm just going to do a brief intro into the item, and then Nigel's going to take you through it in more depth, and particularly the legislative framework around it, and Ross can update you with the current situation, re-registrations and actions to date. And I notice you're smiling a lot, Councillor Bickley, because you asked for this to come to full council, not to Fred Committee from memory. So.
Oh, there.
And so we brought it back. So the general intent of this item is basically to recognise the concerns that many rural dog owners had with the previous setting of the fees, to provide some interim redress within the existing fee structure. Also hopefully recognise your previous council principle around transparency in this space with dog fees. And most importantly, commit to a bigger review next year, given there are some limitations about what we can do this year. I think Nigel will probably address some of those things. We have spent some time on this, but I think we are in a relatively good space, the three of us, at this point in time. Nods are good, yep, fine. So anyway, I'll hand over to Nigel to go through the agenda item in more depth.
Just before, we discussed this, sorry to interrupt, but been advised about today's agenda item?
No. So they haven't, they know in general there's an item coming back to council at some stage. I didn't want to raise any expectation about what that might be, but the bigger message is about the bigger review coming up.
Yeah.
So that's what we've
The
had
whole story would have been, probably, like there's about 12 quite persistent emails. Well, I think as a common courtesy would be to advise those people, but anyway.
I'll take that on board, Your Worship.
Yeah, that's right.
I have been dealing with it with, as you probably know, and Councillor Harvey know.
Yeah.
Yes, we're having quite a few chats around.
Yeah, good. Okay. All right, Mr. McCaddy.
Yeah, thanks. I think the point made, I think we'll address that in a communications plan. So perhaps some particular communication to those persons, but as well as wider, depending on the outcome of your decision making today, some wider communications out to obviously all those rural dog owners. So really, I'll take the paper as read, but I'll just highlight some points here. This is really about what practical steps or a practical response the council might be able to take to the concerns which some rural dog owners communicated to councillors after the setting of the last fees. So really it's the reactions probably come about because of the significant fee increase. So basically dog owners in the rural area went from paying $25 the last financial year to $85 in one go. So it's a significant increase for those rural dog owners. And there was obviously some concern out there at the way that the scale of the increase was communicated to them. So the legal advice that the council's received is that it's relatively constrained in the way or those matters in which it can prescribe fees for under the Dog Control Act, and that the paper sets out that those are pretty limited to neutered dogs, working dogs, dogs under a specified age, that is those young dogs, and persons demonstrating special level of competency, special owners if you like. So there's no legal way to come up with a rural dogs, pet dogs in the rural area category. So that's created a difficulty for the council when it's come to redo the fees. So the options put in the paper there is to apply a reduced fee of $65, equivalent to a special dog classification, and that will be payable by 31 December this year, or a credit against next year's fees for those dog owners who have already paid those full registration fees. There's also a proposal to broaden the classes of dogs that are classified as working dogs, and that will apply to those breeders and dog clubs operating in the rural area. So the effect of that is that it will have some minor financial impact on the council's income, but it's felt that that would serve to provide some acknowledgement for those rural dog owners who have felt some dissatisfaction with the way that the increase in fees was communicated to them, and it's the officer's view that that is the most practical response in the circumstances. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Nigel and Brian. That sounds better. So with those last two classifications, A and B, of the people that we had to these various meetings, do they fit into those categories?
I'll probably have Ross address you on that question, Councillor.
Yes and no, there's a couple there.
And I don't mean just there was a couple that said, look, they had pet dogs and they didn't think it was fair. I don't mean, that classification. Was there any other that we're missing?
So you're talking about there's a couple of breeders in there, and there was a hunt club,
and there was someone that had a whole lot of huskies, and what
yeah.
Do they fit into?
So they would fit into that the working class that were asked for a resolution.
Right.
Yeah, they'd need to have some commercial value or purpose, business purpose for those dogs.
The clubs.
Hunt club would be able to be.
Clubs would be a little bit different. providing a, so the likes of the Hunt Club, although they don't have a commercial gain out of it, they do a lot of pest control for farms, and they have contracts with those farms. So there's a paper trail and an audit trail for that, rather than just.
And the working dog fee is
How much? $30.
the $30, right? So this should cover most of the issues, are you thinking, or do we have some on the edges?
Oh look, I think I think there'll always be those ones on the edges. What this won't address is those owners. Well, won't address completely the concerns, I guess, of those owners with more than one pet dog in the rural area. And the important part of this paper is this is a practical response for this year with the concerns that have been raised. What I should have addressed also is the officer's proposal that we form a focus group for the setting of the fees for next year, so that all the implications can be examined, because what we need to, of course, consider is its effect on all of the community. That is urban dog owners, rural dog owners, and those who don't own dogs at all. So we think that the formation of a focus group, including those people who raise concerns specifically with the council, will really help inform the council's decisions for the next year when it sets fees for all dog owners.
It's probably important to recognise also that non-dog owners are a significant component of actually who funds the activity. Probably the majority. Thank you, Neil.
All right. Yeah.
I just had a question too.
Yeah, as I say, it's a recommendation for this year, and it has to be acknowledged as the paper says that there is varying practices around the country. There are some councils that do provide lower fees, as did this council, for dogs in the rural area. The advice we've had is that you're not able to do that under the Act. So unfortunately there is some varying practices and some inconsistency around the country between councils, and that doesn't help. But I think that these types of issues, the split between public and private, these are the sorts of things that can be debated with or discussed at the focus group level, and then brought back to the council, so that you're well informed when you make a decision for next year's dog control fees.
So when you're proposing $65 here, it is actually technically against the Act.
No, the Act provides that at any time the council can choose to remit or reduce a fee that it has prescribed. That's right. So the council's prescribed a fee. It's choosing to reduce the fees for those owners in the rural area. It's not ideal, but as I say, it's a practical response in the circumstances.
Okay. Well, the biggest thing here is, and I'm happy to support this, that is the communication of this and that focus group. You know, it's all about sort of the focus group going forward, that people are happy. You know, anyone that wants to be happier, and it's relaying that, because I'm just nervous again. We're doing no representations here from the particular people in question. So they're going to get this. So we're just going to deliver the message.
So we'll be certainly taking advice from Lisa and her team in terms of the appropriate communications given the previous sensitivities around this. So I fully hear what you're saying.
The previous decision, the problem was not so much the money, although it was a problem, but was that they didn't know anything about it. So I just make that point. But thank you, Rog. Thank you, Ross. Anything to add?
I can give you a brief update on where we're tracking for those unregistrations. It might put a bit of perspective on things. So out of the total of 7,552 dogs, so 7,252 dogs that we've got, overall, it's 642 unregistered at the minute. How that's broken down is the urban dogs are at 105 to go, but we're tracking pretty well on those. What's interesting is the number of those rural dogs that aren't registered at the minute. We're at 389, which is quite high. However, we also extended that out to 31st December, as you know, to get those registered. And for the working dogs, we're sitting at 148, so still some work to do, but it's
So as a matter of interest, what does that equate to a percentage of rural dog owners who have paid their full amount on time?
I don't have a percentage for you. I can get that too.
It would be fair to say we're behind.
It's fair to say we're behind at the moment just because of the situation this year, but
Councillor Truman?
Yeah, so does the Act classify the breeds of working dogs? What the breeds are?
No, it doesn't have it by breed. It really has it by what they do,
Yeah,
if you like. So there's rescue dogs, there's police dogs.
But so does our policy state the breeds?
I
No.
think it does, doesn't it?
we have taken. I'd have to get it. It's just gone from my memory. There is a recommended breeds that are considered to be working or stock dogs. So we do use that recommended list. It is a government department. I haven't got it on me at the minute. But that's the likes of your hunterways and your cattle dogs and cattle crosses. And so there's about 5 in there, but we do have that as part of our permit or application for working dog.
And what about dangerous dogs? Are they? Wasn't there a couple of breeds the previous government
dangerous
introduced?
dogs?
Yeah, a couple of breeds.
Yeah, there's
menacing,
menacing dogs. There's certain breeds for menacing.
Yeah.
Dangerous dogs don't come under. They can't be a working dog. So there's a couple of little things in there.
Okay.
No, so I was just wondering, because I've had people ring me that have dogs that aren't the particular breeds that are stated, but are working dogs and are used as working dogs. So I'm just wondering, is going forward, like if you have this focus group, is there potentially a way where an owner can make a declaration to state that it is a working dog and
so
what that dog does?
Now. Yep. So they can apply.
So they can do that now.
Yep. They can apply through a customer service centre.
Even if it's not one of those breeds.
Absolutely.
Okay, because the ones that I've had ring me was telling that they've rung up and told, no, sorry, it's not one of the breeds.
No, absolutely not. So they can apply for that, and basically what happens is, depending on the circumstances, they may have to demonstrate that that it works stock, that the dog works stock.
What about your corgi, John?
Mine was a white Labrador, very, very good cattle dog. Yeah, exceptionally well trained, a bit like his owner.
You don't pick on people with corgis. Yep.
Yeah, that's correct. That's yes, based on 1,850 dogs in the rural area, we're applying a $20 fee reduction across all those dogs. Yes.
Cool. Yes, Councillor Harvey.
Sure. So, rural owners who live in the country will still pay the full fee for a pet dog. The normal urban fee.
No, $65.
So you didn't know. Okay, so just because we're in the rural environment, we do get a
for this year, yes. So
for this year.
That's what we're proposing.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, probably a reasonable outcome, I think, gentlemen, under the circumstances. I think communication be here is, is the most critical thing, that you will be reviewing the full fees and charges next year, focus group going forward, and go from there. All right, do I have a mover, please? Councillor Hickling, seconded by Councillor Kingy. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. 5.4, Proposed Alcohol Control Bylaw 2018. Hillary. broadened out quite a bit, or is it broadened out quite a bit, or?
Opposite.
What's his name? Tony's suggestion, the way I read it, it was actually, he was wrong, but it's gone from Rifle Range Road back to Ruapehu. Ruapehu, okay.
So just wondered on page 113, just whether we could put for Mangakino, if we could say Mangakino Town Centre weekend prohibition, other than the whole town's banned.
Okay. So if I pull up the picnic table, go to the picnic table along the lakefront, and then have a glass of Chardonnay, I can't do that.
Only for that 2 weeks.
Yeah, so 2 weeks. Right. Yeah, what's it, 10 days? From Christmas Eve to, isn't the stats, I suppose. Alright, so do you need some councillors from this special ad hoc committee? So the reason, did they hear the applications today, or? Submissions. Yeah, submissions. Okay, this,
Sure.
right.
Okay.
Okay, who
Well,
wants to be involved?
in that case, could I nominate Councillor John Body, because I know he's got a bit of experience in this area.
Is that from drinking? Drinking in parks.
Okay, any other volunteers? Councillor Stewart? Councillor Body? Is that all right, Tom? Yeah. Councillor Williamson? Okay, done. Go the mover, please. Moved by Councillor Jolland, seconded by Councillor Kingy. Thank you, Hillary. Nice to see you again. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Right, 5.5. Turingi Wastewater Project Steering Group, Tanakwe, Dylan.
So this item is regarding the Turingi wastewater treatment plant that has introduced a new way of operating, which is the creation of a co-management steering committee that is basically through the consent. We had hoped to have Tina Crowe on camera watching you do.
Tanakwe, Tina.
And also apologies for the
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. Kia ora. Kia ora, Tina, and respects to Te Wharetāua, Te Riki Tuko, with Councillor Kingi, Andy, and your presence. I just wanted to perhaps step back 2 months, as Dylan quite rightly, I was the councillor appointee on the steering group and appointed co-chair. I attended the first 2 meetings. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the last meeting for personal reasons, which was unfortunate because I would have loved to have been there with the discussions regarding the 2 other recommendations to put forward for today. Because my understanding, and obviously everything is obviously to do with communication, perhaps interpretation, so not pointing the finger anywhere. Just that with we set up the formed the committee, met with Lauren, Amihi and David, of other steering group members, and then we appointed the Simon as our the project manager for the original scope of the renewal of the consent for the wastewater discharge from the plant as it stands. So that was then where there was some discussions with the TAG, with the technical advisory group, and as Tina is the cultural impact assessment author, was with respect to the discharge. So obviously, personally, I totally support the original resolution with regard to the discharge into the waterways and the lake, which I find is not so satisfactory. So I was very supportive, looking at options, whatever they may be. For example, discharge to land, for example, and obviously there was be some negotiations around how that would happen. Taking point, the Taupo wastewater treatment plant back in the 90s, they won an environmental award for their very much initiative with the discharge to land, and has this economic benefits as well. So that was a very progressive decision made at the time. So I have to personally, it's my personal view, have to put a a pragmatism lens over this in terms of the practicalities of, for example, I know it's there's a suggestion as to looking at options going forward for relocation of the plant, so as, for example, interim claims on it, and that sort of situation, and obviously not to mention obviously the economic financial considerations of relocation. So I can only support the original resolution going forward as for the renewal of the current resource consent for the discharge, with the actual proviso with totally supporting the discharge to anywhere but the lake. So that's where I stand.
So, Councillor Williams, you don't support that recommendation there as it is at the moment?
No, I don't. No, I would obviously support. So we received the report, and I report part 1 of the second part. Okay. And not parts 2 and 3.
So just through the chair, just to clarify, Councillor Williams, you you support the initial recommendation, but not the extension of the scope that's proposed in this paper to include looking at relocation. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. And with respect, I do appreciate there are ongoing issues historically and going forward with the treatment process, which I understand there's studies being completed, issues around operational, and I understand some capital improvements being recommended, and obviously with disused ponds and remediation there could obviously being over-designed in the first place. So, but so though I think those things, while I'm not the expert, obviously we're relying on we're only recommendation for the steering group, but that would be obviously to the technical and obviously the environmental and cultural impacts, obviously as Tina obviously is a very important part of that.
And just one other question.
Jollins.
Thank you. Is for Dylan. If there is no agreement on the revised scope from us, then does it just automatically go to the Waikato Regional Council, that reconsent process?
So currently, what's been identified by the project manager is that there is a disconnect between expectations of the two parties of the steering group. This would address that. The question would then be, this is how we've responded to the consent request for our consent to Regional Council, and that was very much highlighted to Regional Council, and Kevin has been working alongside Council to make sure that the information is there. At the end of the day, it would go back to Regional Council, depending on whether well, again, if the two parties were able to come to some agreement, but certainly there, as highlighted by Simon's report, one interpretation is different to the other, and this paper seeks to address what Council has at its head and what our iwi partners have in their head in terms of what's incorporated into the scope of the steering committee, and just acknowledge Maria Nepia as the environmental manager, natural resources manager, sorry, for Trustport, and Lauren, who is also a member of the steering group on behalf of Tūwharetua Māori Trustport.
Okay. Tēnā koe, ladies. All right. Okay, so the council needs to decide today that whether we go ahead with our original resolution or our original understanding, or are we going to vary it to include the relocation?
So if I could just go back to Councillor Williamson's point around the original resolution he talks about, I think and I'm looking for clarity from Councillor Williamson, he's talking about the agreement by Council to not commit wastewater to Lake Taupo and to any of its tributaries, which currently we do. That's been supported by Council, and that is the intent of this work. That's there. The steering group, by Council's definition, was to look at the discharge methods. The iwi recommendations, or the interpretation from our iwi partners, was that we also consider treated wastewater discharge location, wastewater treatment plant location, currently sitting at Te Awa Mate, and thirdly the wastewater treatment process. So those are the three areas that the iwi partners would like Council to consider for variation of the scope, or not.
Okay.
Do you want to say anything?
Councillor Hickling?
We're going to look into ways of the discharge, but then see the wastewater treatment process. Would that not be like going on to field irrigation?
So the treatment process that's talking about is specifically how the treatment plant at Te Awa Mate treats the wastewater before it's discharged. So currently,
I thought that was really good though, because
MBR plant, and it is it was state of the art when it was put in.
Yeah,
it is getting a little bit on now.
That's why I'm questioning it.
Yeah, but that is what we're talking about here, is looking at that process and whether there is any other better processes. Yeah, so that's what's talking. The treatment process
when the
itself
plant was put in, it was state of the art as far as I was aware.
It's still one of the the better technologies around.
Okay, thank you.
How old is that facility? Sorry, Kevin.
I'll be suggesting around 13, 15 years.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Councillor Kingi.
I thank you, Your Worship. Just noting my interest as a sitting trust board member, but I'm just going to make a couple of comments. We'll seek a couple of clarifications. If we were to include some of these suggestions in a revised scope for the steering group, that doesn't necessarily tie council into having to make a decision on it. It allows the group, I presume, to be able to talk about activities and
at some point make recommendations back to council. Can you give me some clarity around that?
So that's a very good point, which is it is a recommendations only to come through, so there is an ability for council to still have overall decision making. Irrespective of what happens today, that is still the role of that steering committee, is to make recommendations, receive technical reports, including, as Councillor Williamson noted, the CIA or Cultural Impact Assessment that is being completed by Tina, but likewise understanding some of the land ownerships and looking at what suitable options are for the disposal. That is what council says is what was the plan. The question that's being asked is whether the scope can now include an alternate site to Te Awamate, and or the way in which the Tūrangi wastewater is treated if that plant was not there.
Okay. Councillor Kingi? Yeah. Oh, thank you for that, Dylan. Yeah, so that's what I sort of understood the recommendation to outline is that it gives us some ability to move. I suppose a comment I'd like to offer council is that we are in, I guess, the modern age of dialogue and relationships with our various iwi and hapu around the lake. And so I don't think we should be afraid of exploring things that may not necessarily have been on the radar at the start. This doesn't scare me by any means. I think it just allows us to have a frank discussion on what's important to a local hapu in Tūrangi, but also there may be other hapu around the lake that also have things that they wish to, I guess, discuss with council. So I think we, let's not get caught in the detail of this. I think there is an opportunity to actually have a conversation about the bigger picture stuff. Yeah, anyway, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kingi. Councillor Johns?
Just a question through, this is probably one for Mr. Strongman. If we widened the scope and looked at relocation options, what's that going to do to timeframes and costs? And considering your workload and the vast number of projects you've got in the next 12 to 18 months?
So through the chair, obviously the timeframes will be greater because there is a reasonable amount of extra work that wasn't anticipated in that space. But what do you define as greater without putting it on the spot? It's already a long process. I don't know. I'd be disappointed if it was double the time, but I don't think it'll be like 10%. It'll be time and a half, something like that, in that space. It's hard because it's relationship stuff. It does take time, and it takes time just to get the right people in the room. And the cost, I think we've dedicated around $70,000 for the work to date. We were going to use them, basically all of that, and maybe a little bit more from other areas to get the first part, the treated wastewater discharge location, discussed and worked through. And so obviously if you're looking at extras, the majority of that work, we probably had the right team and technical advisors that we were going to rely on anyway to do that. It's just a little bit more work for them. So there will be an increase in cost. I couldn't give you a quantum at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Boddy? Question, if we come to this impasse, it ends up in the hands of the regional council, would that be correct?
Yes.
So the regional council would then be charged to do exactly what we're attempting to do, but maybe have a better success than what we are. Would that be correct?
Potentially, but that's subject to, I mean, obviously they have legislation and are, the Act to work through. Initially we were looking to be innovative and working on the relationship to build this, and the suggestion came from Tūrangi Tukua around how best to participate from a hapu perspective alongside council to work through the consent, and so we've worked through that. This is probably the first impasse.
Yeah, so now they've got new factors have been introduced.
So I think to be really clear, it would go to a consent hearing for whatever you applied for, and then you get all the uncertainties and costs associated with that process and any subsequent litigation, and who knows where that will head. So this was about trying to work with those parties to try and avoid most, if not all of that.
Yeah. I'll also note that Councillor Kingi raises the point around other hapu. This hapu the wastewater goes to the lake. That's the only place in the district. Bit of whakamā comes with that, around the fact that your para goes into the lake. That's part of the motivation, and certainly some of the conversations that have been had separate to the steering group meetings is around why. So yes, there's other hapu, but in this instance, Te Rangitukua and Karaui are certainly aware that there's a bigger impact on their taonga.
Okay, well the two issues here, going back to the original resolution, if councillors maintain that should be the scenario, or are you happy to introduce the relocation as a possible option? Obviously, taking into Councillor Kingi's comments about don't be afraid, don't be scared of it, because we still get the final decision. So, you know, the way I think of it as chair, in the interests of our wonderful relationship we have with the iwi, Te Rangitukua, you know, why should we be so nervous? And it doesn't appear that, like, what the issue is, if the recommendation from that steering committee is for relocation, that will be the issue, because that's significant costs. So we will have to work with that once we get it. But I'll put it out to the councillors.
I mean, the only other comment I want to make is we did appoint a councillor to sit on that steering committee, and he's giving us a recommendation in his view, and he's the one who's been living and breathing this for the past few weeks, so I think that deserves some respect and consideration as well.
Absolutely, we certainly value Councillor Williamson's.
Through the chair, obviously, I totally respect the comments made, particularly by Councillor Kingi. I'm still very mindful of respect, for the iwi, historically and currently, and good working relationships. You talk about the big picture, looking at being relevant and sort of being brave. I think that we just have to be. I still like to apply that practical lens on the whole thing. This is the facility that benefits the whole community in Turangi, southwestern region of our beautiful district, and that's just the point I was making. So, in the event of in the event of a recommendation one way or the other here, I'm still will work with people, work and be positive. Otherwise, I'd possibly, if the recommendation goes to support this recommendation, I may feel my position untenable even on the recommendation on the steering group committee and step aside.
Okay. Are you going to suggest a amended recommendation? You'd like to? Okay, so Councillor Williamson.
Well, from my original commentary, I recommend that we receive the report and supports the steering group considering options for the long-term disposal of wastewater for the Turangi community only treat wastewater discharge location as original resolution back in April.
Okay.
And if they part one,
Part 1, no, 2 and 3.
And I'll second that amendment.
Okay, would anyone like to talk against that amended resolution?
I would like to talk for it, Your Worship, because just to put it into a priority list, I would have thought that the wastewater discharge location is the most important to deal with first, and so I would support Councillor Williamson's recommendation, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Anyone else like to talk in support of the suggested amended resolution by Councillor Williamson and Councillor Jollins? No. Would anyone like to talk against it? Councillor Kingi.
Thank you, Chair. Just I guess reiterating my point earlier is, and again respecting John's points you've raised, which are very valid. No one disputes that item B1, treated wastewater discharge location is an obvious thing that we need to address. And I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that. I just really think we can consider that there's other activities that we need to that we could, think about over time. And so for me, this is just about being brave in that context and actually just putting it all in there and talking about the whole thing rather than in bits and pieces as we tend to with some things. So I'm supportive of the original recommendation, which I guess means I'm against yours.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King. All right, anyone else wants to talk against it? All right, I'll put the suggestion, sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, it's up there. Council receives the report and if you want considering options, long-term disposal of water. Oh yeah, it's in here. You happy with that? Just mover and seconder? Okay, all right. Been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? I'll vote against in support of Councillor King. Thank you very much. If I could have a recording, please.
Sorry, through the chair, I just wonder whether the word discharge should be in there just to clarify, because we've had numerous discussions around making sure we're 100% right and not avoid any re-litigation as such. That was the intention from the discussion. So long-term disposal or discharge disposal.
Discharge, after discharge, disposal.
I can't see it, sorry. Of wastewater discharge. Yeah. Just for clarification, I think. Yeah.
It's in there twice. Supports the steering group considering options for the long-term disposal of wastewater discharge for the Turinga community, with the scope to include treated wastewater discharge location only as per the resolution made. Okay. All right. Been moved and seconded, and we've done all that, so it's been approved. All right. Thank you very much. 5.6. Council engagements. October 2018.
Haven't got anything to add on to that. I'm just noting that our next council meeting won't be here, so we're going to Waitanui to the marae.
So, I still have a public forum too, yeah?
Yes.
Across the road.
Across the road on the other side, the lakeside.
The new one.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay.
Haven't received any requests for conferences, etc., so there's nothing there.
Councillor Hackling.
So I think through the chair, it's a matter of timing of when those meetings have been planned versus when this agenda's been printed. So normally they would be on there, but it's just a timing issue. The agenda would have been printed a long time before that.
Yeah. This one, the agenda was printed before we.
2 weeks ago it would have been printed, and those
So
meetings
those
were
public forums, what have they been done? Just put in your diaries?
Yes.
They've just put in your diaries yesterday, I think.
Yep.
Yes.
So
So Gary, would you like a copy of the morning?
Oh, no, I've done
Yeah.
I think that if they were, if those dates were set before the 20th, it'd be nice to have them.
So just for the notes, I guess, on the night of the 2nd of October, we've got the business after 5 on the cultural precinct, and on the 3rd is a public meeting, both at the Great Lakes Centre, both starting at 5:30 p.m. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Lovely. Okay. Conferences. Right. Recommendation there. Received the information. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Johns. Right. Members' reports. Yep. 5.7. Thank you very much. Members' reports. Councillor Harvey.
So, last week, Council and I took part in a but it was more of it was great because we had the opportunity to have a bit of an open forum with several members of the community. The chair found the question and answer thing, and I don't know how you felt, but I thought that was fantastic because people had the opportunity to a smaller environment to ask us a question. We'd like to think that cats would do that a bit more often in some sort of organised way, not sure how, whether it's more coffee mornings or I don't know, but it was, I know several people appreciated the fact that we could do that, and it was all very civilised and pleasant, and it was really good.
Yeah, the men's fashion show. Didn't they? Wow.
So I just don't know whether we can think of other ideas for that. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rosie and Christine, for doing that. Many difficult questions, or?
Well, that's where the market came up.
The market, okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, we did talk about council staff. We talked about a lot of it. It was fascinating. They didn't know we had an economic development plan and I was welcome tomorrow. It was really that we honoured. And then a really positive one came up, and that was positive. And we raised 3 things. Yeah. That was well done. So it was very
And that was for what, hospice or something?
yeah, it was split. It was more of a thing for women's refuge, but it ended up being split. We're going to put the funds out to women's refuge and the suicide awareness.
All right, any other members' reports? Councillor Waddy.
The other day in a general conversation, one of the ladies here raised the question that council seems to spend a lot of time and money bringing people into town, and then it was followed on, what do they do for us? Now, these are long-term residents that are well into their retirement. It's a hard one to answer because, in fact, we spend a lot on economic development. How does that filter through the community? It's an age-old question, but it was interesting that it was raised.
What sort of thing do they?
Well, what do I, and let's say I'm that person asked the question, what do I get out of the 1 point whatever million we give to Destination Great Lake Taupo, or what do I get out of, because we have an Ironman here, what do I get out of the cycle race, what do I get out of tourism, what do I get out of the Chinese archway? There's a whole lot of questions in the community that are very difficult to answer.
Hopefully they've received more visitors. You know, being confined in a wheelchair is not that much fun, so if we are creating a bit of activity, hopefully they receive more visitors and make their life a bit more pleasurable.
Jobs for their grandkids.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. And the more people that come to town, the more services are provided, services are needed, and so they have more choice.
More hospitals, whatever.
What our hospital is providing now is because their FLP activity is happening, and we're growing activity, and we're preparing for that. So they wouldn't have half the services that our hospital
would it be fair to say that some of those, and you're right to point those out, do not come from their rate money? It comes from an increasing population, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, we as a council don't give money to the hospital. You know, there's more taxis in town because there's more people, but we don't fund taxis. If you get, see what I'm getting. Sorry?
But we bring the people, which require.
You're correct. You're correct, but we do have an increasing retirement population here that are asking those questions.
So one of the great answers would be probably looking at what we're doing now with the precinct project and a better museum and better facilities
Yeah, so on behalf of the Mayor, I went to the awards for the Waikato River Trails, where they were the recipients of the New Zealand Walking Access Commission Outdoor Access Champions for 2017-18. I just had to read that. But it was really great that they got some recognition for all the awesome work that they're doing. And there's a new event called Summer Sizzle, which is on the 12th of January, which is going to finish in at Mangakino Lakefront. So that'll be a great event for our district, our part of the district. Yeah. So yeah, that was a great night.
We still contributing to Waikato River Trails?
Yep. So, do you want to report on last night? If you'd like to, I've had my say. You can have a go.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, Rosie and I and Dylan and Helmut and Cornelia from Turangi and Andy, of course, and the Rangatira Hub Trail Trust. They won an award. Fantastic. And as Rosie did a little talk on behalf of the Amir. It was actually a joint one with Waipa. First one, Taupo Waipa Trust Power Community Awards. The first one. It was a bit of a trial.
What was it like?
Sort of mixed opinions about it, but yeah.
Next year we'll be here.
Yeah. So that was a good turnout from the Taupo Turangi community. Yeah, beautifully. Watched the rows going past. Yeah.
And Lake Taupo Hospice were the Supreme Award winners, which was fantastic.
So when you say Supreme in Taupo or Waipa as well?
That was the
Taupo
one. Yeah. And also Emergency Accommodation Taupo received an award. And Kyla Allen Jennings from Taupo Nuiatia and Taupo Pathways and Turangi Rangatihi Hub all received awards, and I probably didn't get any of them.
Growing with grief with Marilyn.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was some great winners, and it was great. Several people from Taupo went up and supported and took part, so that was fantastic. It was a great evening.
Good.
And yes, next year it's here. So we were looking at, just sorry to finish, we need to think about where we might have it next year rather than just Great Lakes Centre, give it some thought. We're somewhere on the water. Probably there would have been 100. So maybe the yacht club, something like that.
All right,
Would be lovely though. Very nice.
Oh, yeah, just one last one from me. We had the Creative Taupo grant schemes application consideration last week. So on behalf of the committee, I just wanted to extend a thank you to all of you for the increase in the grant funding to the creative community. It was well received, and we had some great applications, things through from Taupo Primary through to the Kapahaka Festival and some of the big stage productions, some awesome talent in town. One thing I did want to note and just bring to our attention is on a lot of the application forms, some of the biggest costs faced by these groups is the charges from our Great Lakes Centre. So on one hand, we're giving money to support these groups, and it's often to cover some of the running costs. And I know that those costs are subsidised, but it just feels like we're shuffling money around. So that's something maybe we need to think about a little bit later. But just thought I'd say that one. And also, John and I went to the Friends of the Museum AGM the other weekend, and it would be fair to say that attendance at the AGM was double the year before. So, but one of the points that was brought up by the members there is because they've been doing all the volunteer work for the Shuzhou exhibition. They're the ones that come and greet you when you come in the door. It's been a big, extensive piece of work. But my understanding is that the numbers through the door for that exhibition are not as high as we had expected. So I know that we've got some projects coming up, and I know that Mr. Dylan mentioned earlier that it's going well, but the numbers aren't that significant. We're talking a few hundred, so I think that's something we just need to be conscious of.
Very good. Okay. All right. Of course, yeah. Yeah. looks absolutely fantastic, you know, so yeah, and it was great to be supported by Reverend Jenny Chalmers and the other Reverend too, from the denominations to say that they're more than happy to support that anything, you know, I know we've had a bit of flack about it, this, but anything that supports peace has got to be a good thing, so yeah. Dominic there, and so you walk through the Chinese archway, come across, how do you pronounce his name? Sri Chimney? Yeah, and Alison Rowe, that was the telling one, Alison Rowe won the New York Marathon, the Boston Marathon. When she won the New York Marathon, which you know this, Christine, she got offered to meet the President for lunch at the White House, or meet Sri Trinmore, and so she took the latter and she said it changed her life. So there you go. So, would you do that, Gareth? Just waking you up, that's yeah, so she missed out on the club sandwiches at the White House. Alright, okay, we can have a mover please for the members' reports we received. Thank you, Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Park. All those in favour, please say aye. Sit. Lovely. So we'll keep going. Confidential business for the members' reasons outlined there. If I could have a mover to go into confidence, please. Thank you, Councillor Hickling, seconded by Councillor Truman. All those in favour, please say aye. That's against. Carried. Thank you, Robert. Righty-ho.